I was watching Lamar Jackson play yesterday, and the description I would say is, can you play well when you're not playing well? I don't think he played great. His first touchdown pass was a thing of beauty, but it was more in the play design. Like, I cannot remember an NFL tight end being that wide open in that place in the red zone. But like, look, Lamar was what he usually is throwing the football. It's hard to tell how much weather dictated. 14 of 23, 105 yards, one touchdown. He had 101 yards rushing, including some key third downs. The biggest play of the game, to me, honestly, was one of the reasons I would compare him to Steph Curry. I would. If you go back and look, there was a roughing penalty on the San Francisco 49ers on the final drive. You know, he runs out of bounds, and there's a roughing penalty or a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. And I believe there were 4 calls, 3 roughing the passers and 1 unsportsmanlike, where he was actually tackled inbounds, but because most of the tackle took place out of bounds, and more than anything because it's Lamar Jackson, and it was right in front of the Baltimore bench, it was 15 yards. That helped set him up for what became the game-winning field goal. But to me, this is part of the story. He's a Steph Curry to the NFL. Here's what I mean. When Steph came out, I looked at all the traditional point guards and said, to be a point guard, man, he turns it over a lot. Man, he shoots a ton, crazy shots, and his body just doesn't look like one that can hold up in the NBA. And he's not a traditional 2 guard either. He's a little bit both, right? He needs the ball, but he's not really a point guard. And yes, he's a great passer, but he's not a pass-first guy, and you're kind of waiting for him to do his thing. There were a ton of doubts about whether or not Steph's game would translate to the NBA. It wasn't that people didn't think he was good or they could really shoot, but it was, how does it translate to the NBA? I thought he'd be Jeff Hornacek, not a 2-time MVP. Also, it's important that Steph has a unique skill, but it's really helped by the way in which the game is officiated now. Now, look, I'm super cautious of the Lamar Jackson thing, and I think it's very reasonable to point out that in addition to all of these running quarterbacks getting hurt, the league hasn't designed defenses yet, hasn't set their defenses in the offseason yet to beat the Ravens. That's why year to year it's really hard to replicate. And remember, most of these teams are setting their defense in terms of personnel-wise, one, to whatever the coach's scheme is, but also what type of defense is going to beat the most teams. And most teams run some sort of shotgun into a spread or a West Coast offense. Those are the two. And you said, like, the 49ers are not designed to beat an option, pistol option zone read run game. They're just not. But because Houston's doing it now, because Baltimore's doing it now, because other teams will do it more, you watch, next year's rosters will look a little bit different than this year's rosters in terms of trying to match up to a 2 and 3 tight end look. So I think he benefits from teams setting I've talked about this with the Big 12. One of the reasons that Kansas State under Bill Snyder was able to be so successful in running some of the same stuff, some single wing, what's called 11-on-11 football, was everyone else in the Big 12 ran spread. You got to recruit players to compete against Oklahoma, against Oklahoma State, against Baylor, against TCU, and spread it out and throw it at Texas Tech. And so when you get into the college football playoff, you're playing against more traditional teams. Your recruiting and your defense isn't designed for those type of offenses. Same thing with the Ravens. But the officiating, look, had Steph Curry played in the 90s when they let you hand check, he wouldn't have been able to do all these things. And I don't know how much the officials can protect Lamar Jackson, but yesterday he got several protection calls. And he's not the only one. Every quarterback seems to get these calls now. But can they protect him enough so that he lasts longer and his passing can come around? That's a big question. And here's the last thing. Here's the last and most important comparison. Steph Curry to Lamar Jackson. The organization with the Golden State Warriors decided to go completely all in. If you remember back to when Steph was first with the Warriors, he had ankle injuries the first couple of years. And so, yeah, he had some good stuff about him. And they finally started going to the playoffs. But then when they went to the playoffs, it was with Mark Jackson, who was coaching all isolation and old school kind of one-on-one NBA offense. And they knew they had to find someone who could let Steph be Steph. Let him not think and overthink about turnovers. They had to get personnel that fit in getting multiple other ball handlers. Iguodala, Draymond Green, Andrew Bogut, Sean Livingston, then Kevin Durant. All could handle the ball like point guards, so Steph didn't have to be a point guard. He could just be Steph. The Warriors went all in on Steph. From style to personnel to coaching. Guess what the Ravens have done? Same thing. They went out and got him Mark Ingram, who's a power running back, who's also all in on Lamar. The coaching staff from Greg Roman to John Harbaugh decided we're going all in on it. Keeping RG3, who's a competent, capable backup of running the same offense, is going all in. But more than anything, it's the mentality of this is how we're going to play. And yeah, we may throw for 125 yards some games, but so what? We'll get a great defense, we'll get a great kicking game, and we'll beat people. See the parallel? I don't know if he'll be a 2-time MVP. He seems on his way to being at least a 1-time MVP. I don't know if he'll win a couple straight championships or if they can get other players to come in as a free agent. But I do think there's some similarities there between Steph in terms of the timing of when he became a star in the game, the organization going all in, and the quirkiness of his style previously not working in the NBA or NFL to Lamar Jackson.
Hi, I'm Doug Gottlieb from Fox Sports Radio, and you need to subscribe to the Fox Sports Radio YouTube channel where you can hear and see me. Why not? Plus everybody else who's awesome here in Fox Sports Radio.